Ladies and gentlemen, for over 13 years, the WWF/WWE as we know it today had competition like no other. We saw wrestlers walk across the street and join a different promotion. Sorry, having some technical difficulties. Let me try that again. We saw wrestlers walk across the street, join different promotions, oftentimes. But we are talking about the world of World Championship Wrestling. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Wrestling Realm Presents Season 2 of Championship Culture. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I got to apologize for that intro. I was having some technical difficulties, having some feedback. Hopefully that didn't translate on your screen, but guess what? We're going to get everything under the way. Before we get started, I just want to remind you of a couple quick things. Did you know that you can watch all of the Wrestling Realm content at any time just by going to youtube.com/the Wrestling Realm? This includes all 25 episodes of Season 1 of Championship Culture, plus a bonus episode. You can follow us on all social media platforms, which include Instagram, Threads, X, and Facebook by using @TheWrestleRealm and Championship Culture _ on Instagram. Don't forget, you can like and subscribe and engage in the conversations. Because when I tell you we engage, we're going to respond, and you might even get a chance to see your conversation on the screen. You can download all of our audio content on Anchor, Stitcher, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Watch us on the Twitch channel by using the hashtag @TheWrestlingRealm. Now, in a couple weeks, there'll be 746 million people probably in Philly for probably, as it's called, the greatest WrestleMania of all time, as it's being billed, or the biggest WrestleMania of all time. If you still haven't gotten your ticket and you want to save some money, guess what? The Wrestling Realm got a treat for you. If you go over to SeatGeek.com, put in the code The Wrestling Realm, it's going to save you $20 off of any purchase of $50 or more just by using the code Wrestling Realm. Once again, anything over $50 or more, it doesn't have to be WrestleMania. It can be a sporting event. It can be a concert. It can be anything that you can go to SeatGeek.com to purchase some tickets for. We want to save you some money. So now, with all the logistics out the way, when you saw the graphic as WCW, you got to remember, from 1998 to 2001, WCW gave us some of the most gorgeous and most prestigious looking belts. Or did they? Now, that's debatable. And I think in order to debate that, because if you paid attention to the Wrestling Realm social media or Championship Culture social media, you'll see I kept posting about, is it prestigious? Were they the best looking belt? But in order to do this justice, I got to bring on somebody who has a passion for these belts unlike no other. Now, I can tell you, I'm probably impartial to, X Division titles. I'm impartial to some of the New Japan belts. But back when the Wrestling Realm received their custom titles, I remember a certain 6'12" gentleman come into the room that we're sitting in now. He looking around, and all he kept calling me out for was not having some of these belts. All he kept saying was, where's all the WCW belts? You have a love-hate relationship with WCW. I said, I don't hate them. I just didn't have them. But sometimes when you get called out on them, it's time to discuss. Because I gotta tell you, this guy, the 6'12" phenomenon, he goes by sometimes the realness, sometimes TRDA, sometimes just Dwayne. He's always got a hat on and always the man that loves these WCW belts. So, ladies and gentlemen, in order to touch on these belts today, I had to bring the realness on. Come on in, realness. Let the people see who you are because the shenanigans is about to begin.
Acknowledge me. No. Ow. Oh, my bad. We on. Hey. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean for you to see guys. See all that. I was I was in the middle of a little WrestleMania anyway, Championship Culture Season 2. Hey, I'm here. What's up, everybody?
So, if
Hey,
you
I
might
didn't
know, season two
hey.
had 5 episodes
Woo.
dedicated to just you, right? So, this is one of those ones that I was told it's happening. With little to no notice, we had to be prepared for this. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the real Dwayne Allen, the CEO. Is it safe to say CEO of
If you
T?
want to.
Okay, good. The CEO of TRDA Brands, right? Not to be
Mhm.
confused with the CEO of AEW, which we'll probably get into tomorrow. But I'm gonna just tell you this: he is the CEO of TRDA, a 6'12" phenomenon. I'm gonna keep saying he's 6'12". Let me introduce
I
you
don't
all
know
to
where you get that number from.
Dwayne Richard Allen. Welcome,
Wow.
brother. Welcome to your edition of Championship Culture.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on for this very, very special edition of Championship Culture. We're rocking and rolling in season 2. The wrestling realm is expanding and growing. And anytime I get a chance, first of all, I'm on the show every week. People just don't see me unless you see me in the chat. But today I get to engage in a very, very special conversation because guess what? World Championship Wrestling nostalgia is really hot right now as we head into the WrestleMania season. And yes, the guy, I can confirm that story to be true. I walked in that room, I looked around, and I was amazed at the belts that he had on display. But I noticed there was an absence of some very important scraps, as they used to say, missing from his collection. And I was curious as to wonder why. And guess what? Because they gave me the ability to produce 5 of my own shows, I decided that now was the time for us to talk about it. We are here, ladies and gentlemen. The realness is crashing championship culture season 2 to talk about World Championship Wrestling with WCW championship belts. I'm ready to go. Let's do this, brother Brandon.
All right. So, as we can see, some people are in the chat. And look, it must be Tuesday, right?
It's
And
got
it
to be.
looks
What,
like,
what other day would it be?
exactly. And let's just take a second and welcome Marcus in the chat because I can't wait to hear his take because this man comes with the fire to let us know some. I thought I was a disruptor. He's going to definitely give us some facts that we ain't think about and definitely throw some curveballs in it. And all I'm going to say is, I think the championship cultural guys are going into the finals, but we're
Come
going to say
on,
that
bring it
for
home.
we're going to bring it home, right? So let's just say that. And if you ever been around
Oh, you already
Marcus,
know.
it's about to be interesting. But brother, I gotta tell the people this:
Yes,
you have a title in your possession.
I do have a title in
Took
my
some
possession.
inspiration
Hmm.
from
Which,
that took some inspiration from the first belt I want to dive into, right?
huh? You talking about
And
this
this,
belt? You talking about this title? Disruption. Here it comes. Ladies and gentlemen, if those who are championship culture has never seen this beauty of a championship, take a look at it. It's the realness championship belt. It is inspired by the next championship that we're about to talk about, which proudly comes from World Championship Wrestling. That's the first disruption. It's going to be more. Go ahead,
oh
brother
yeah.
Brandon. I'm
So
here.
let me say this because a lot of people, this name of the belt, we're talking about the WCW light heavyweight slash WCW cruiserweight slash
Hmm.
WWE cruiserweight.
Hmm.
The lineage gets a little confusing, but let's talk about, the belt that brought us a lot of wrestlers that we are enjoying today and a lot of wrestlers we're celebrating and legends of, today. If it wasn't for the work they put in with that, do we just want to call it light heavyweight so it won't get confused so we know what we're talking about, or you want to call it a cruiserweight? Which one you want to call it?
The cruiserweight. Come on now.
All right,
What
the
else?
cruiserweight.
What is it known for? What is it the most famous for? What do we recognize it from the most? Don't switch up because it's the subject you don't want to talk about. It's the championship culture. I want all the championship culture flavor, seasoning, and sauce on tonight's show because you're gonna put some respect on WCW's championship belt lineage and some of those timeless classic designs they've given us over the years. We're gonna talk about it, brother. We here to
All
talk
right,
about it.
so since you want to talk about it, let's talk about it, right?
Let's talk about it.
All right, first thing I'm gonna ask you,
Hmm.
what version do you like of the belt? Is there a particular version that the realness just is fond to? Sometimes when we think about belts, we have a connection because of the time that we were watching it. Which
Absolutely.
version do you seem to gravitate to?
we've had this conversation before, and I will always tell you that I always gravitate towards the mid to late '90s WCW run of the WCW Cruiserweight Championship belt. Right, the it's tagged as 1996 when it officially became. They had the WCW Lightweight Heavyweight Championship that ended in '92, and then we show up in 1996, and we have the WCW. Look at that beauty! Look at that! You
All
talk
right,
about disruption. It stopped me in my tracks. Look at that thing.
so
That's the most
let's
iconic
break
version
that
of
down.
this championship.
So what makes it iconic? Is it the WCW logo on the side? Is it the fact that it's in the Continental Crown took inspiration from it because it was such a classic design? What about it? Let's break it down. What makes you love this belt?
Listen, what makes me love this belt is that the lineage and the history kind of adds to the design, right? And I say it adds to the designs because we've had multiple iterations of cruiserweight championships. Now, the name cruiserweight is very, very unique and nostalgic to WCW because I believe they were the first one stateside to actually utilize the name cruiserweight rather than light heavyweight. Once their WCW light heavyweight championship pretty much went defunct, and then you didn't see another cruiserweight championship until it was adopted in WWE, of course, after the acquisition of World Championship Wrestling from Turner Broadcasting and in AOL Time Warner. So this particular championship is the one where its history and its lineage really, really took off. We're talking about the matches, the way it was presented, and the moments that this particular championship gave us. It's a touch of nostalgia, which makes you appreciate the beauty. To me, it was the first. It was the original. It was nothing comes close to it, and just the way this belt is held and carried to me is something that to me has never been replicated ever since. I think because every belt has a story. That's what we do here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This particular championship carries very particular stories of this time period. And if you think about those stories that I'm referring to, and I'm talking about the moments, the matches that this belt was included in, it's timeless classics that we go back every day and watch on the network or YouTube or just even we're scrolling on social media on X or anything else, and you see these iconic matches. And guess what you see in those iconic matches at the end? That beautiful, gorgeous WCW Cruiserweight Championship title. Such a beauty. It doesn't get any better than that. And I'm trying to figure out why you don't have it. Hold on. This is what you do. You every time you do a show, you try to put the subject title line of whatever belt you're going to have on the show somewhere in your background. I'm looking at your background, brother Brandon. I don't see any WCW Cruiserweight Championships. I don't see any Cruiserweight Championships. I don't see anything close to it. Once again, that's strike one. You're only proving my point, but I want to point that out there. I didn't mean to disrupt you again, but I have to, is because I got to make my point clear to you, sir. You're not getting enough respect to W. I want to know why you don't like WCW belts as much as you like belts in general. I've watched you travel the world. I've watched you look at global titles, independent titles, smaller promotion titles, and yet the second most successful sports entertainment conglomerate to ever exist, and you have no WCW Cruiserweight Championship. Brother Brandon, come on, you're the belt king. Talk to your people. I see a lot of eyes on this product right now because I'm looking at the screen. They want to know why don't you have any love for this WCW Cruiserweight Championship? You
So
look
it's
rubby.
not that.
You pulling your ear like you Tommy from Martin.
So I'm gonna tell you this.
Yes, sir.
The reason I don't have the cruiserweight belt because I didn't love that design, but
Okay.
I didn't
Stop.
hate that design either.
Okay. I gotta hear
Okay,
this. Go
so
ahead.
let's look at the belt again. Let's break
Yes,
this
sir.
belt down because this is where every belt has a story. Let's look at the design again.
All
Okay,
right. Mm-hmm.
so the sunburst pattern at the top and bottom, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. The world, you know how I feel about the world being front and center. Globe. Okay, cool. The pillars on the side, the semblance of a intercontinental title with the pillars on the side and the brackets coming out. It always felt like it was so many elements and so much at one time for me to look at. It felt like it was so many pieces of a belt put together. It just didn't scream at me. And for it to be World Cruiserweight Wrestling Champion, it's like, okay, I felt like it didn't flow because it says World Wrestling Champion, even with the WCW on the side. Cool logo, different side plate. I'm all about a different side plate than your main plate because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to draw your eye to it. The red pops, the see the centaur that they're doing on the side plate, cool. But it was just something about it. I never was like, I'll get it. Maybe I'm not. It's always been on my long list of belts and towards the bottom of what to get. So that's the real. I hate to say it. That's really the reason. And don't get me wrong, Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio Jr., and I'm gonna keep saying Rey Mysterio Jr. because that's what we
Yeah,
know
he's
him as
definitely
on
the
that
guy.
time.
Like that's the pioneer.
Ultimo
That's
Dragon.
of course. Yep.
Um, of course, Chris Jericho.
Got to be
This
Chris
was
Jericho, of
the
course.
Rey Mysterio title to me. It was the Dean Malenko's title. It was the
Billy
Billy
Kidman.
Kidman title.
Yes,
You get
indeed.
what I'm
Yes,
saying?
indeed.
Like,
Look at these. You first of all, I'm looking at these photos that you're putting up on the screen. If you and ladies and gentlemen, if you're not watching, you're listening, please head to youtube.com/the wrestling room and go to Championship Culture playlist and watch this episode because I'm gonna tell you right now, I looked at those 4 photos and you took me back in time almost 22 years.
all right,
That's
let's
how
break that down.
that that's how special that moment is. The you for those like I said once again, for those who are listening, very specific graphics went up. Brother Brandon was just pretty much he went into the pioneers of the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. And I say that is because that was the thing that I was alluding to when I was talking about my affinity for this particular championship, is because during this time period, also for me, I was just getting back into professional wrestling, right? And I first got back into WCW first. These guys opened the show. These guys did whatever. They did something on the show that you weren't going to see throughout the rest of the show. They kept you occupied long enough before Hogan and the NWO comes back out and finishes the show, Sting, DDP, etc., etc. That was the beauty of the first hour or so of WCW Monday Nitro back in, I don't know, anywhere between 96 and 98, 99, wherever you fall off. But you
And
mentioned something. Mhm.
remember,
Say
this
again?
was a time when we had the giants, the big guys. We
It,
had the 6 foot plus guys that were towering as heavyweight world champions. Then we had a whole different mixture of a Dean Malenko and then a Billy Kidman, a Rey Mysterio Jr., a Chris Jericho, the legend Ultimo Dragon. You had so many people, and I'm going to keep going back because that belt reminds me of them, like to the point, is Rey Mysterio the greatest cruiserweight, or is
mhm.
Billy Kidman the best cruiserweight to do it? Was Dean Malenko the best wrestler in that division? You always can attach something to it. You can always attach these things to it, but that's the work that brought us to the forefront for me to be able to pay attention to them. Like Shane Helm's career with the cruiserweight title, whether it was in WCW or WWF,
Work of
it's
art.
because that's how we like the Hurricane. We
Absolutely.
understood because we were able to see that. Billy Kidman, he was he the first one to do the shooting star press?
That we saw stateside,
Yeah, stateside.
like on,
Yeah,
you
so
know what I
it's
mean?
like,
Like, and allow me to challenge you, Belt King. And this is what I come to do. I did this, I was waiting for this. Let me
okay,
challenge you with some history, and maybe this can help you. My goal is to try to change your mind about the design of the Cruiserweight Championship title. Super producer brother Hugh, would you mind putting that image back on the screen for me, please, if you wouldn't mind? Because I'm going to try to add some historical reference to this particular design, so I can try to change the Belt King's mind about the things that he's not too keen on in regard to the championship. And don't get me wrong, they're all valid points. But let me break some things down to you. What you're looking at when you say a lot of, brother Brandon, if you don't know about the gate, the Belt King, he's not big on secondary titles holding the title world. He doesn't
no,
like he'll accept the big globes because it kind of implies world, but then you have world cruiserweight championship. What you're looking at when you look at the side pillars, you see the championship ribbons, you're looking at championship elements. And to me, the belt had to say world cruiserweight is because this particular division introduced us to a different style of professional wrestling that we had never seen stateside before. Now you say, well, the wrestling has existed long before anything, it wasn't just in the United States. That may be true, but we got to keep the time period in context. We're talking about 1996 when this particular championship was first introduced. This was many of us, our first time being exposed to any other professional wrestling outside of what we grew up on, the 80s and 90s, what we saw stateside. We saw a very Southern style. We saw a very grungy style from Texas. We saw a very refined style from New York. We saw a very what's the term I'm looking for? A very hard-nosed style from the Midwest. These were all different styles that we saw stateside, but we had never really been exposed to the lucha libre style of professional wrestling. That has been, don't get me wrong, it's been around for ages. It's been going on in Mexico, it's been going on in South America, it's been going on in Canada, it's been going on in Japan, right? But that particular championship was a way to show the people that those who were competing for this title were superstars from around the world. So it's like that was the world championship of that division. And that's why I defend those elements. And you see all these like I said, what you know this as a belt designer, those are all championship elements. The pillars, the championship ribbons, the globe aspect in the middle. And it was WCW's way of saying, hey, who is the world champion of this particular style of professional wrestling? And it only helped that Eric Bischoff didn't care what they went out and did. Like nowadays, you'll never see that style of wrestling ever again. And I know we're taking a long time because I'm long with it, but it's the takeover show. But it's because now we know. Now, see, they didn't know this back then, but now we know that style of wrestling is appealing to young folks. And sometimes you'll start looking sideways at your product after you have to watch these guys unhinged doing whatever they wanted to do. During this time period in WCW, we talking mid 90s, 1996 on up to 98 ish. Eric Bischoff didn't care what they did. He said, I don't care what you guys do. Just go out there, entertain the fans, and keep them happy because he was so confident in what they were bringing to close the show. He wasn't concerned about it. So to me, I challenge you with that bit of history in regard to the design of this particular championship, Mr. Belt King, as to the reasons that you don't like the belt are all the reasons why it had to be there because it put an emphasis on how important global wrestling was. Look at that beauty. Come on now.
You really love this belt.
I'm telling you, like you don't this is the end all be all cruiserweight championship for me. Don't get me wrong, the other ones are beautiful and they have their place, but it starts with this.
Okay, I'm gonna give you that one, and
Yeah, yeah,
you might have convinced me to add that to the collection, but I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction if you let it be known that I need to add that to the collection.
brother guy, it's
But
fine. Or just
so
just
is
do
it
what you always do.
prestigious? Is it
Listen,
prestigious?
brother guy, just do what you always do. Just buy it, don't tell nobody, and just let it put it right behind you, and just we'll see it on the show, and we'll celebrate that, and we'll call it a victory. You don't got to say anything.
Is it prestigious though? Is this belt?
Absolutely. Think
Okay.
about it. This championship brought some of the best wrestlers from around the world to mainstream American television in the mid 90s. And it became a crucial a part of the show and one of the main reasons why you didn't flip channels the first hour during the Monday Night Wars. I don't
Yes.
think it gets any bigger than that. And you say, well, why is that such a big deal? Why does it matter? It's because that timeline that I just told you about is the reason why we have modern day professional wrestling right now fighting for TV rights the way that they have. Is because TV became the lifeblood of the professional wrestling industry. And that in that era, the Monday Night Wars era defined that, and they played a major part. Go back and watch every Monday Night War era TV show, every WCW DVD. They always tell you about the importance of the cruiserweights and what they played for their particular show. That at one point, WCW is still the only other promotion to ever be number one in the world when it comes to be the number one wrestling promotion outside of WWE, WWF. Whenever you started watching, it's the only other company. So shout out to
That's what I said.
AEW.
They had competition like no other during that time frame. And I'm gonna
And
ask this
mhm.
question.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Bless you. See, you're allergic to the fact that you don't like the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. It's trying to send you a message.
So you're saying it's prestigious.
Absolutely.
Is this belt iconic?
Absolutely. For the same
Okay.
reasons.
All right. I just want to
listen
make
to me.
sure that so we can clearly say that the realness believes that the WCW cruiserweight, light heavyweight, whatever, that belt is
Yes.
prestigious.
And I'm gonna tell you why real quick. Ready? Rey Mysterio, Ultimo Dragon, Billy Kidman, Chris Jericho, Psychosis, La Parka, Eddie Guerrero, Juventud Guerrera, Chavo Guerrera. Like, do I need to keep going? How else
Nope.
would we have known? Where were these guys placed on the card? How else would we know who these guys are? What did they all go on to do?
Big Carters. They went on to become Hall of Famers, icons, and legends.
And I didn't name all world champions.
Nope.
But I named a bunch of world cruiserweight champions. Ah, you see what I did there?
So I'm gonna go to the next one because
all right. See, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. Hit the applause button. Yes, right. It's working. Championship culture's on fire. It's the takeover day, man. WCW, I got your back, baby.
I can't believe he convinced me. So sometimes I might change my, but I'm gonna ask you this question.
It's rare, so I'm celebrating every video I can get, brother.
Now, a lot of people to understand WCW, you have to understand a lot of its history.
Yes.
Kind of similar, it parallel to what TNA did. Yes. TNA was started, but it had the NWA backing, hence why the NWA World's title was their world's title. Absolutely. With WCW, it was a lot of buying, merging, adding, bringing this over, and a lot of the lineage, even for the United States belt, but we're going to save that for a later time.
Oh boy!
But there was another belt
Yes,
the
sir.
television championship that can be
Mm-hmm.
traced back to the NWA territory days. Now
Yes.
we know back in these territory days there might have been, and I don't quote me on this, but it might have been a television champion here, a world television champion there, television heavyweight wrestling champion there. But what happened was in 1991,
Mm-hmm.
during Arn Anderson reign, the belt was renamed to the WCW World Television Championship.
Correct.
And it was renamed because it now became one of the belts for WCW. And no, I don't have this belt, but the thing about this belt
What'd you
that got
say?
me
What'd you
was
say? You said, though you don't have this belt. Is that what you just said? Wow, that's two.
yes,
Okay,
okay,
that's 2.
I don't have this belt, but
Mm-hmm.
this belt became it finally became its own entity. It became the WCW belt, but I'm gonna just call it, and I'm gonna tell you this: when
Yes,
I
sir.
see this belt,
Mm-hmm.
that's the Booker T belt for me.
Absolutely.
This
No doubt.
this was Harlem Heat separating, not necessarily I'm going my own way. It was Booker T establishing himself as a singles competitor with this championship.
I can't wait to
Yes,
talk.
we
Look
had
at
a
that.
Diamond Dallas
Woo-hoo!
Page.
Shout out to Brother Hugh and Fire Graphics. Look at that.
Let's see, because this is when Booker T, yes, we knew what he could do as a tag team. We knew what he could do, but this belt, he made me pay attention to it. And
Oh
granted,
man.
he had his first run. Do you remember when he first won it at? Let me see. I'm gonna test you
Do I
because this
remember
is an interesting
what you said when he first won it or where?
where he first won it.
I do not remember. No.
It was in Baltimore, Maryland.
Which would you look at that? It's only
Exactly.
fitting. I had no
So
idea. That's how young I was.
yeah, yeah. So he won it in '97 in Baltimore. It was an episode of Nitro, and this became the he can do it. He is a singles
Yes.
competitor. When you had such a successful tag team, a successful dominant tag team, now he's breaking out, and it gave way for other people to have that chance. Of wrestlers like Fit Finley that we knew in WWE became into stuff. Chris Jericho, Conan, Scott Steiner, even his brother Stevie Ray had it at one time. But this belt was kind of hot shotted a lot, but
Yes.
it always seemed to make its way back to Booker T. And when
Mm-hmm.
I say it made its way back to Booker T, it was kind of elevated when he had it. So when it comes to this belt,
Mm-hmm.
Brother Realness,
Yes, sir.
the breakdown of this has some inspiration for your belt, just like the
Again.
other does.
Let me show you. No, let me show your audience again,
But
just in case they didn't see it the first time.
yeah,
There it is.
so
Thank you, Brother Hugh.
let's
Look at that. Bam.
look. All right, so it has some inspiration for this because I know that you have a love for this belt, right? But let's look at this belt and break down the actual television title. So brother, brother, this was a 5-plate design. It kind of reminds you of the big gold, but in a smaller sense. With here we go again, the globe in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
the logo at the top, and it said World Television Champion.
Correctamundo.
Brother Realness, when you
Yes, sir.
first saw this, what was your initial thoughts on this? Did you feel like this was a big deal, or did you feel like this was just another mid card title?
Well, you have to understand when I saw it. Like when I saw it, I was a kid, right? And it wasn't that big of a deal as far as the belt was concerned. I think the part that made the impact to me the most is, like you said, how it was won, right?
Mm-hmm.
Booker T carried that belt like it was a world championship. And if you listen to Booker T talk, he goes into detail about, like, look, in everything that was going on, a lot of people were either trying to avoid the NWO or be a part of it. And he was like, no, like, I saw a perfect opportunity in the middle at the single star to say, look, there's room in here for this. And he treated that world television title like it was a world championship. He treated it like it was important. There was a handful of people's champions, and the people's champion in WCW was mostly known for was Diamond Dallas Page, but Booker T fell into that category as well. Like they just like your WCW show could start off with Hogan and NWO, somebody come out, make a promo or address what happened last week, right to your cruiserweights, then right after the cruiserweights, right into your workhorses. It wasn't a whole lot of tag matches in WCW, in case you haven't noticed. And then there was your Booker T time, right? You had a split time between Booker T, your Ravens, your Diamond Dallas Page, that mid level guys. I can't even call them mid cards because you're thinking about what these guys end up becoming. But he will come out there and he was a people's champion. He was a big deal. He would come out there. He said, "Look, I didn't have time to cut promos, so he would always go to the camera and he would cut his promos at the TV camera." And I remember that as a kid. Like he would come out there and say, "Yo, what's on, baby? It's about to get hot in here. We about to make it." I say, "Yo, this dude is like on
He did
fire."
something different at the time that made you pay attention to him.
And
He
it
made
was
that feel like more important. And to address this comment, the biggest difference between the two, the U.S. title felt like it was the secondary title, but when whoever held the television title, that felt like the secondary title because a lot of time the U.S. title was reserved for former world champions, whereas
mhm,
though the television champion was who's the next person to going up the ladder. So it was
right.
kind of like in that vein, not necessarily like the European and Intercontinental, but more like the Intercontinental and the U.S. how they are now. It just depends on who's holding it and what's happening. So yeah, they were both mid card titles. It's just, is that fair to say that the U.S. was more held for former world champions, or we just need a placeholder? But the television title is really what we paid attention to.
Well, you got to remember the look at the dynamic of mid card titles in WCW versus WWF. In WWF, it was very calculated, right? You started off with your European Championship. That was the first step, for workhorse guys, and then if you made the Intercontinental Championship, that was like, okay, now I'm a show enough workhorse, and now I got to get out of this space. And you knew what the next step was. Usually, like originally in WCW, it was a little bit different. It's because you got to understand the lineage of the NWA that Turner Broadcast kind of bought into, right? So you had the World Television Champion. The World Television Champion was one of the first championships that really showed us what a mid card title is supposed to be. Why? It's because of television. They needed a TV champion to kind of carry TV outside of Ric Flair traveling the world, but you had weekly TV every week, so you needed that person to kind of show you this is what a mid card championship really is. So when WCW kind of adopted the television championship into its own lineage, that was another workhorse title. There's always a space between this guy's a mid card workhorse, but not necessarily next in line, right? Like nobody looked at the world television champion winner as, okay, this guy's up next for the United States, and then they're up next for the WCW, because that's not how WCW necessarily worked. They didn't really work around their titles. They kind of put the title on whoever the storyline dictated for the title to go to make it important, if that makes sense. Versus the cruiserweight and the television shot, they were both workhorse titles. Like if you can go out there and wrestle and boogie, you didn't need a whole lot of storyline. The guys that fell into that category on both sides were trying to compete for that championship.
And they were
United
competing
States,
for TV time to be seen too.
and that's the whole point though, because the TV champion got to go to Thunder and main event Thunder a lot. So like that was the thing that they didn't hide, the fact that television is important, right? And being a television champion means you got a certain amount of TV time guaranteed. Like that's how they sold it to you. And that was something that it was a section of guys that necessarily weren't cruiserweights, but not necessarily in the main event conversations or the storylines, that will go out there and just wrestle their tails off. And their stories developed based off the wrestling. See, WCW was unique. The WWF eventually became known for everything had a storyline. It was the best storytelling you saw on TV. It was better it was to the point it was competing with soap operas, it was competing with
I was gonna
movies.
say that
You know what I
it
mean?
was better than daytime soaps.
At WCW, on the other hand, like the storylines in the main pictures and the middle cards sometimes were there, but in between then you had to fill it with your workhorse championship wrestling that people still showed up to see live in person and on television. That's where that television championship fell into. The United States Championship was there too, but it didn't necessarily mean that anybody could hold that championship at one point. It could be Sting, it could be Raven, it could be DDP, it could be Goldberg. That championship was reserved for whatever they needed it to be reserved for importance. Like, so when Raven and Diamond Dallas Page were beefing, they needed the reason to spice that up because DDP was United States champion, right? When Sting and Bret Hart were in the feud, we can't tell Bret Hart's in NWO, Sting's in a Wolfpack. How can we make this a bigger deal? Sting happens to be also United States. Bret's trying to fight Sting for the United States Championship, right? Like it didn't necessarily mean that it meant anything or a certain group. The United States Championship fell on whoever needed it for whatever reason of importance. Versus the television championship was all, you never not saw a workhorse with that title. And if you don't believe me, in around late 98, 99, when they stopped using it for that reason, it fell off. It's because for
It became
almost
a prop.
it big time, real bad, especially in the latter years. Because for 2 years, that was the workhorse title. That was the workhorse title. Like the battles between
everybody wanted to see.
yeah, because like Book and Booker T was its biggest star. So like, don't get me wrong, you can have a bunch of workhorses, but if you don't have a star in that workhorse group, nobody's coming to see you do what you do. Like it's at that point the fans have no connection. Booker T was the star of that era, of that division, of that group of guys that competed, and guys like Fit Finley didn't like it. You know, that there was other guys that competed with Booker T for the same reasons. I don't like that people think you're the better wrestler than everybody else on this card. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, you know, where that like you've never seen the, if you notice, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, I know we got to move on. You've never seen a WCW television title involved in a major storyline based off that title, right? Like it might have been a prop for Scott Hall at some point. You know, I think that was the last person to really hold it like that, you know, but it was never like Goldberg is beefing with Raven because Raven took his television channel. Like, no, it was never like that. You know, it was the only person that brought that kind of story to the workhorse titles wasn't Chris Jericho. Because Chris Jericho she shook things up a little bit and added some storylines because now he thought he was the best cruiserweight in the world. And he did things, you know, think about it, his feud with Dean Malenko, you know, and Dean Malenko, the man of 1,000 holes, and Chris Jericho's what? The man of 1,001 holes. And then we got that famous TV segment where he starts off reading all his holes, and then we come back from commercial break and he's still reading them, and he's still reading the holes. So when you look at the television title in the cruiserweight championship, it was more workhorse wrestling based title versus the United States. You know, it often shifted. You know, in the world title, you know what the world title was. That was always the main focus of everything. But you know, that was always in the main conversation. So hopefully we answered and gave people a better understanding of, you know, where this time period in wrestling was and how these championships were used.
So it's crazy because was this belt the right size, or do you think it was the main plate was too small? Do you think it was the perfect size for
this is
what
the
it was?
perfect question.
Perfect
This
size.
is why I love this show. This is my favorite show on Tuesdays. I'm glad you asked that because if anybody who knows me, and this look at that thing, and Brother Brandon knows me as well. When you look at the WCW World Television Championship, it looks like the world titles used to look back in the 80s. Hogan's 86 title, as it's now known as, has a similar shape to it. But to me, this is a very prototypical shape or silhouette for a wrestling championship. And at one point in one era, this will be the size of a world title. And I've always been a big fan of big titles. That's why the Big Gold was always one of my favorites. Like even now, I love big main plates. That's how I like majority of my championship belts. But it's like for a side championship, this to me is the right size. Like for some reason, I don't mind it not being overwhelmingly big because it's not a world title. It's the world television title. But it's big enough, it has a good enough silhouette and shape that makes me go, this title is important. Like it's not overly skinny like a women's title. Like you remember the first AEW women's title, how it first looked with when they first brought it in.
It was so small.
But see, that's how like the first wrestling belts looked when professional wrestling became an actual thing. Like, and we're talking about in the as they call it, the golden era. Like that's how the original. They were like literally, they really were just belts with giant buckles, and that was considered big for the time. And I'm like, I'm not a fan of those little belts, but that title is big enough because it's the television championship. It's not the Intercontinental. It's not the United States. It's not the world. It's the same thing with the Cruiserweight Championship. I expect that championship to be like, I don't need a world undisputed version 2 sides of that belt because I'm a big dude. Like, no, it's supposed to be smaller. It's usually reserved for smaller talent, so it makes sense. Medium
just like
size.
the women's belts need to be smaller because you don't want it the same size as the male belts because they have a smaller frame.
Absolutely. Something that kind of
Marcus had a good point. He said WCW did amazing work when it came to engraving parts of all of their titles. That's why they look so pretty, in my opinion. So would you say prestigious, Marcus? Because I'm pretty sure we're 2 for 2 now with prestigious and iconic according to the realness, correct?
Yes, 100%.
So I'm a transition, and I want you to think about this.
Yes, sir.
As wrestling fans, there are a few I don't want to say incidents, but a few points in history that we always know the story behind them. We always hear the story.
True.
I said, wrestlers used to walk across the street and jump from one brand to the other. We know about the Montreal screw job. We know about, certain aspects of wrestling. And we all know about when the Big Gold was the WCW World Champion, right?
Correct.
And Ric Flair had a disagreement. I don't know if it was creative control or what. It was just a disagreement, and he left and walked across the street, right?
Mhm.
But he walked across the street with the belt, and it's always about a 25,000 deposit was made, and this is back in '91, right?
Yes, I
So
believe so, yep.
they were faced with what do we do, right?
Mhm. That's correct.
And it's crazy because from what did we do, we received, and I actually do have this belt. We received this version of a belt.
Ladies and gentlemen, brother, the crazy part is out of all the belts that you have, why is
Why
it
do
that
I?
one?
So let me. Every belt has a story. We're going to transition to every belt has a story just for this portion, right?
Let's do it.
So why do I have this belt?
Please tell me.
All right. As a kid growing up,
Mhm.
and you always want to look for representation.
That's true.
I remember my grandmother being excited. I think that she kind of had like a crush on him. But when Ron Simmons got
Okay,
that three
granny.
count and
Mhm.
became the first ever African American world champion,
Mhm.
I feel like I had to have this belt. No matter the designs, we're going to get to it, no matter what the lineage was, the fact that Ron Simmons
That's cheating.
held this title and just remembering her being excited and seeing, the lady I'm looking up to, and she like, this is a big deal. Not really understanding that moment until I became an adult.
Sure.
This was a belt that I sought out to have. Now, to be honest with you, this is actually the WWE release of this belt,
Mhm.
which it is a great looking replica.
What era? I'm
Uh,
sorry, if you don't mind me asking. Like, when did they
uh,
release this?
about 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Oh, okay, so that's pretty recent then.
Yeah, it's probably when they started releasing them, right? Um, but it's probably about 6 millimeter thick. It's thicker than a 4 millimeter. It
Okay.
has the WCW property plate on it, which at the time was their logo that they were running with.
Mhm.
And just knowing this part of history
Right.
attached to this belt,
That's
and the
cheating.
story has been told that Ron Simmons didn't know until he was in gorilla position about to come out, he was getting the title.
Right.
And for him to have that moment and to be called the first world champion, this was another moment, as you said, in Baltimore as well.
Mhm.
And just
A lot of
because
moments in
yes, the
Baltimore,
belt
ain't it?
is gone,
Yeah.
but the design of it. What do these side plates remind you of, brother Realness?
It's the winged eagle, man.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Bro, that
Who
this
made this belt?
that's not fair. Because first of
So
all,
the
you
story, some of the stories have been told. I haven't fact checked. Is that
is this a
they
Reggie
went to,
Parks?
I believe so, and said, "Hey, we need a belt," and it was a rush order, and it was because he was making belts by hand. It was the mold of it, and don't get me wrong, it's a good looking world title for what they were using it for. It was on par with the Wing Eagle at the time. It was on par with that champion. It looked like, this is the major championship for that promotion, right?
Mhm.
And it became a thing where, in its short history, it's sought out. It's sought after. Granted, yes, it has the three. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the glare. It's got the three different globes on it, but the last side piece has, I'm sorry, the last side plate
Mhm.
has wrestling figures on it. So for you, brother Realness,
Yes, sir.
who do you think about when you see this belt?
There's only one person you think about when you see that belt. It's obviously Ron Simmons.
Okay. Was
It's
this a good
obviously
design or bad design for him?
here's the thing. And this is the one WC championship that I'm just not a fan of. Now you cheated is because you try to add all that historical context and history to it, which is like if you are anyone who has been affected by change in life and you understand the importance of what you just said, of what Ron Simmons did, and also shout out to Cowboy Bill Watts. It's because you can't judge a book by its cover. Because if you look at him, you would never think that he would be one of the biggest proponents for African American wrestlers, superstars in during the day and age where it was not widely looked upon. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to accept that championship, but there's a reason why it was short lived. Now that I got that out the way, there's a reason why it was short lived. To me, it was always too small. I never liked it in comparison to the big gold because that's the first thing they showed me, and also it looks like a like you're trying to keep up with one of my favorite championships that was ever created, which is the WWF Winged Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Reggie Parks, and then his protege Dave Milliken. Like this, like no, don't do that. And that's the part I look at it and I'm just like, all I keep seeing is a cheap copy of one of my favorite belts. And it's like, for all that, I'll just get my favorite belt. And in comparison to the Winged Eagle, I'm like, I don't like it. So I'm sorry, not the Winged Eagle. The comparison to the Winged Eagle and the big gold, I'm like, well, shoot, give me the big gold, because that one, you go from looking at that, like Ric Flair made that championship belt iconic for a lot of different reasons, but it was big, it was loud, it was in your face. It was Ric Flair, and that's what everybody chased after. So even when Ric Flair lost the title, passed around, so on and so forth, when he leaves, he takes it with him. That's the think about it, is the reason why that particular championship was pegged as the real world's championship, is because of the lineage attached to it. You go from that to that, it's almost a downgrade. Like, it wasn't even close.
But the reason I have it is because of that story, and it's crazy because,
which makes sense, by the way. Let me make that very clear.
Yeah, if we didn't have the Wing Eagle, this belt would be fine. But because we had the Wing Eagle, because across the street was doing these matches, and because we had the big gold, it kind of felt like this belt kind of like became a second fiddle. I'm happy that Ron Simmons was able to be a world champion. Just like Vader. Vader was a multi-time champion. Sting held the belt. This was Sting's first world title. So it has attachment to history and to icons and legends. True. It's just that, I feel like if you the fact, and I always say, I don't care if you had it for 1 day or 1 hour, you are a world champion. You are,
absolutely.
On that level. So I can get past the fact that Ron Simmons didn't have the big gold, but just like with Mark Henry, because he had the big gold, he's a world champion. He's, in
world
my
mind,
world
champion.
Yeah, he's been a world champion, whether it's WWE, whether it's world champion, whether it's WCW, he's a world champion.
Anything about Booker T?
Well, we're gonna get to that too. So yeah, so I think we can kind of we're gonna rust this belt off to the side because
go ahead. I don't mind that.
Okay, we're gonna rust that to the side because I think we made our point on that one, right?
Yeah.
But let me ask you this question.
Yes,
Are you
sir.
ready?
Absolutely.
When we talk about the big gold, and I've said this before, and I'm probably going to say it to be funny, there's about 746 different versions of this belt.
Yes, you have said this 1,000 times.
And there has been times where certain people have had it, certain people haven't. I think the person to hold it the most is vacant, because I swear in WCW at one point, it was hot shot, it was hot potato, whatever you want to call it. And I have it, I'm stripping. I have it, I'm stripping for it. I'm stripped of the title, I'm getting the title back. It was just shenanigans within WCW where every other week it felt like it was a new champion, it was a new vacant. But this title has been seen the most in mainstream media, probably than any other belt.
Of course.
Would you agree or disagree?
Big time. Oh yeah, I remember seeing this belt everywhere. You see this belt in rap videos. Raekwon had it in rap videos. I remember in 2004, the Detroit Pistons all had championship belts after they won. Like, this is.
Now we're gonna break that one down for a second, because let's look at that with the raised crown, the raised globe, the floor pattern, the pattern behind the wrestlers on it, and it says World Heavyweight Wrestling Champion, right?
Yes, sir.
Straight to the point, right? It lets you know, no matter what company, I am the champion, right?
There you go.
And it just makes you look at it. So no matter if a sports team have it, no matter if a celebrity has it, this is the champion, right? This is the championship that we all remember.
Yep.
Is the Big Eagle or Wing Eagle?
There you go. Now put me in a trick bag. Here we go. That's not fair.
As prestigious as the Big Gold.
That's not fair. And by what terms? What are you saying? Because this is you're not dealing with your everyday belt fan. Like, okay, you got somebody that knows some things, Mr. Belt King.
People in the comments, is the Big Gold
you had a whole show about
this? The Big Eagle and the Wing Eagle, because I'm gonna put them two in the same category.
Have you done a show about this already? Have you done a show comparing these two championships before?
Nope, we talk about Big Eagle and Wing Eagle. But we might. You know what? You're right. We're gonna hold off on that one.
Because I'm like, because that's gonna go. I know this show's not as long as Wrestling Rum Now podcast. You asking for trouble. Like, this is
I'm gonna hold off on that.
Okay, because I'm not. That's a loaded answer. First of all, that belt is an absolute beauty. Look at that thing.
So it's okay. So I'm gonna tell you something. So
yes,
everybody, story. If you notice, I got a signature right there, right?
Whose signature is that? If you don't mind me asking.
So It's crazy. Of course, I got Booker T.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kevin Nash, and
Okay.
that's
Yep.
Goldberg. All right. I actually, looking at this belt, nobody would know.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a commemorative one. I won this
Really?
one. Yep, I won this
I
at
won.
MCW one night,
Wow. You
and
won it at an NCW, like it was a contest and you won?
so good friends of mine were having a raffle,
Okay.
and he was trying to break even so that way he could at least get the money back for the belt.
Sure. Of
I think
course.
he was selling the tickets for $5 or $10. And I was like, how much more do you need to break even? So I went on and put my name in there. And it's crazy because the show before, I
Mm-hmm.
had won a raffle and I told him, I said, keep it. It was like a jersey or something. I said, I know you didn't make any money off of it. Keep it, right? So then this time, I
You
put the
kept
money in
that
a
one.
raffle so he could break even, right?
Yes.
And his wife went to go pull it. And she looked at me. She said, Brandon, you won the belt.
Go figure.
I
The
said,
belt
okay,
guy,
thank you.
the king. It's
So
like belt fate.
ironically,
Mm-hmm.
I went back to MCW,
Yep.
and the first time I met Booker T, he signed it. I had pictures
Wow.
of it. I probably had to put it on our social media. Then, of course, Kevin Nash, and he
Please
put
post that
NWO for
photo.
life, and
Yeah.
then Goldberg's signature, right?
Yeah. You
But
can't
I
go wrong with
want,
all those. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't want to talk about that one. I want to talk about one of the real ones on brown
Ooh,
leather.
look at that.
Yeah,
See, that's not fair. You're doing it again because that everybody knows that that brown leather, it almost takes you back to that moment of the Real's World Heavyweight Championship when Ric Flair debuted. Like that's the same belt that Ric Flair left with, that
hmm
big brown prestigious championship. It carries a strong lineage to it. And this is why I was like, don't try to pull this debate thing right now on this show, is because it's loaded. It's because that particular championship carries the NWA's lineage of when that belt was debuted back then. Right. So to sit there and say, well, which one is more prestigious? Is like, oh, wait a minute now. We on uneven ground. Like,
So we're gonna hold off on that debate because I'm asking some other questions about this belt.
yes, sir.
I'm asking this.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Uh-oh.
I think this belt is a gift and a curse because all the pictures that you see when
Mm-hmm.
people want it, it's so crazy because you can always tell it was a good moment. But how many times do you remember seeing this belt upside down? I think everybody
Yeah.
that bought it would literally
It's
take the picture like this.
I'm like, the first thing I think is like, do they realize they not holding it right? I think and here's the excuse that I gave people. You ready? Because I cut people a break, show them some little grace and little mercy. Is that the belt can be so heavy sometimes on your shoulder. As soon as you flip it off your shoulder, hold it up, you're not paying attention to where it's at. You're just trying to get it up, and trying to have your moment, like raise the championship higher in the air. So that's what I tell myself. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's always the case, but of course it always irks me. But I'm a belt person, so it's just one of those situations. I don't.
Is this the best looking belt?
And once there you go again. You keep saying it's the best looking belt. In regard to what? What are we talking about?
So I'm gonna say this because whenever we ask people that top five,
Mm-hmm.
this belt seems to be the one constant that everybody says.
It has
And when I
lasted
say,
for 50 years.
does it look the best out of all the world titles that we've seen thus
I
far?
can answer this. Okay, so there you go. You give me a question I can answer. Yes, it does. It's
Okay.
because it's the most replicated belt. Even if you look at WWE's current World Heavyweight Championship, it's a homage to this original design. Right? We've seen everybody make their own version of Big Eagles. Like, think about it, the ECW Television Championship, one of my favorite mid card titles. Me and Brian did a show early in the years of Wrestle Room called Mid Card Mafia, where we talked about all of our favorite mid card. That looking belt, I liked it is because it was reminiscent of the winged eagle, because the winged eagle was gone by this time. The big eagle had kind of taken its place. But I was like, man, this is as close as I'll get to it, But you didn't see the World Heavyweight Championship overly replicated because it kind of stood on its own. You know what I mean? Like, of course, you saw the indie promotions and people make custom belts for their sports teams or fantasy championship wins. But when you see that belt, there's too much championship lineage connected to the look of it, the beauty of it, the overall structure of that. Like, it's such a unique looking belt. We've never seen anything like that replicated close to it ever since, without having to acknowledge that particular belt in the first place. So, like, WWE's new World Heavyweight Championship, they tell you it carries the lineage of the World Heavyweight Championship, which was connected to the original belt, which that belt was connected to the one you have on your shoulder. So it's like you can't do that belt without referencing that particular championship. and its lineage connected to it. Like you can't do that with any other wrestling title in the world. Think about it. There's no other
I think
wrestling
so.
shape.
Mhm.
Say what?
No, I was
There
gonna
is
say, I think
none.
because it was the first one that made it into mainstream. I think
And
that's
and
why.
and it's think about it. It's the only one that carried over into three different companies, right? You got the early years of the NWA, and then it crosses over into Turner buys the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions specifically, and it becomes World Championship Wrestling, and it travels into WWE, and now it's having its second run in WWE, and we have a modern take on that lineage. Like, what other
And
championship belt?
remember, we would
Mhm.
see sports teams with it. We would see you win the Super Bowl, the World Series. This was the belt. It was in movies. It was the championship for Ready to Rumble. It was, even when David Arquette had it, it was you saw this belt. Like now, when the wrestler goes, so like John Cena, The Miz, Roman Reigns, when they go on a talk show, yeah,
Mhm.
you have the network logo sitting there. But before that, this is what we saw. If
Right.
somebody wanted to say they was the champion, you would see this. Um, and I'm saying it's because it just screams champion. Everything about it just
Absolutely.
screams champion.
Absolute
And
beauty.
brown leather just does something different. I do want to get one on black leather,
Mhm.
but I'm had to get a different version because this is the dual plated one, and I don't
Yes.
know if you can see the gold and the silver, but it's so I don't want to call it beautiful. It just works. This
And,
just works.
and that's the truth, though. And sometimes certain things just work. And I think that particular design is why it's been replicated and revered for decades now. You know what I mean? And like I said, the modern take on it now, once again, is like the evolution, and it's a complete homage to the McMahon family showing its respect for their championship. Is because the McMahon family came out of the NWA. So, the fact that you have like the McMahon family crest associated on that championship, is like this is now that it's in our possession, we want to pay proper respect to, especially the historians like Triple H and all those people who champion to bring this particular championship back outside of a universal championship or a global galactic title that you have. Um, but yeah, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that it'll to me, it'll never go out of style. I have a quick question for you though, because I know we got to get ready moving. Um, you mentioned Ready to Rumble. What did you notice very specifically about the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in that particular movie? Now you mentioned it was dual plated, and it's usually mainly gold, with the dual plate being silver. Of course, in that movie, it was unique as a wrestling fan when I saw it because I was like, "Oh, it looks pretty cool," because it was inverse, where majority of that particular belt was silver or nickel plated, and the dual plate was gold. What'd you
Go
think about that when you first saw that in that movie? First of all, did you enjoy the
well
movie
as a kid growing
as a
up.
kid? Yeah,
it,
exactly.
it was cool. It was
It's
cool.
you try to watch it now, you're like, "Whoo, man, getting
I'm
a little
like,
too
what is
old for this
this?
type of, this
Oh,
type of humor."
oh, you just make it kind of makes you cringe.
Yeah,
But
listen, that's the word. It's not as funny as it used to be. Oof, ooh, ugh.
and as an adult, I understand why they had to do the belt for it because certain things like when we see certain belts in certain light, we're like, oh, but then you see certain belts other light, you're like, oh, that's it.
Mhm,
And I think that the fact that we got to see it because if let's say if a World Series happened and then whoever wins, right?
mhm,
They have that belt. You see it on TV. It's they got the world title. We're not
right,
gonna look at the details.
of
But
course.
when he was like this in the ring, it was like, yeah, yeah, I'm the champ. It was like it just looked like, oh, that belt is so. Oh, look at that. Even to the day you're looking at it, it's gonna just draw your eye to it.
Yeah,
And
because and everybody knows who held those championships. So when you hold it up, it doesn't matter if you had a card game. Oh yeah, Ric Flair had that. That's a
oh,
championship.
that's the Ric Flair belt. Automatically people associate Ric
Bingo.
Flair with it. We forget that Sting had it. Not we forget, but in that order, the icons had it. You had Hogan, Ric
Mhm.
Flair, Sting. Um,
What you mean, Randy Savage? Yeah.
Macho Man, what 5 or 6? How many times did Macho have it? Was
Honestly,
it
I
four or
don't even
five?
know how many times the Macho Man had the championship. I don't even know. All I know is that I had it a couple of times. Yeah.
DDP resurges of
Yeah,
later in his life.
he saved that championship because he had that championship when the company was going downhill.
Booker
And
T.
Booker T was another one that he got his
Booker,
first run when the company was going down. And ironically, that was around the time Kevin Nash wrestled the most. I don't know if you noticed
um,
that.
Kurt Angle was the first WWF wrestler to hold the WCW title. Um, The Rock
And then
held
who?
it twice.
The
Chris
Rock.
Jericho technically had it twice.
Yeah.
Booker
I feel like every
T was
every WWE guy is like, man, I want a chance to hold this championship. I got to get my run. Had the chance to grab it, put their hands on it, because everybody wanted to
That's
have
what it
that
felt like.
championship.
It felt like it was a. Oh, you want it? You want it to?
My
Okay, here you
turn
go.
now. Okay, you had yours. Now my turn. Like I never was in WCW, so now it's my turn.
Yeah, I would. This is the only time I'm gonna have it. And like even Scott Steiner, Goldberg, all
Hmm.
of these moments, he said, "Do you think the new world heavyweight title should be as big as the big gold?" So I'm gonna
Is it?
say no.
Hmm.
I'm gonna say it shouldn't be because we don't have the land of the giants, and we want to
Sure.
make sure that the belt still looks as important. Because
Hmm.
look at the belt on Rhea Ripley. The
Yeah.
women's title looks like it's that belt looks so much more prestigious compared to the network logo or the white strap. Then when you look at Seth,
Yeah.
no
Kind of.
matter who on the roster is going to hold that belt, it's
Hmm.
going to be great. Because think about it, when AJ had the WWE Championship, it looked like it was all the way up to here to him because
Sure.
it was
Yep.
such a
He's a
big
smaller guy.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, smaller guy. Now with the
Hmm.
world title, if he gets the big goal, it looked like it's important. But then you get somebody like Drew McIntyre that's going to have it. It's going to still look like as important. It's not
Yeah.
going to look like when the Big Show had the United States title.
I
It's like
hate.
somebody put a
Oh,
toy on
you
his
try to
shoulder.
trigger me right now. See, you out of all the things you brought up, one of the worst. There's like top 5 subjects in belt world that I hate to have conversations about. And when they brought back the freaking United States Championship, nope, I'm gonna save it because
Okay,
oh,
yeah, say that one.
sorry, I got
Um,
triggered.
so then we also have what's everybody's favorite version of the Big Gold. So
This
I'm
is a
gonna
very
say
good
this, you
question.
will laugh.
Hmm.
Whatever version you think you like, it's probably not the one that you remember because it was
Okay.
so many different versions. Well, we had Vegas Big Gold, we had the one on the brown strap, the dual plated, the crumb
Yep.
rind, the
Hmm.
WCW version. We had the NWA version that became the WWF. I mean
Hmm.
WCW version. Then we had when it came back to WCW version of it. Then we had the one WWE started with, the one they brought back. So it's been so many different
It
versions.
really has.
I think my favorite is the one that doesn't have anything at the top, and it's the one, not necessarily this one, on the all gold,
Hmm.
um, with nothing at the top. That's my favorite version. The reason I have this one, every belt is a story. I got it at a really good deal, and y'all
You
know I'm
did.
a
That's
sucker
you
for
say that a
deals.
lot.
I got it at
Missing
a
twenty
really good
dollars for
deal.
the undisputed version too. What is that about?
Yeah, I paid $20 for one belt.
Season 1. Go back and watch it, please.
Season one, episode one. Let's get this out of the way. I think that's what the name of the show
That's
was.
exactly what the name of the show was.
But every belt has a story. But I definitely, I feel like it's a couple people on different belt groups, and his name escaped me. I think he has every version of it. I think I put it in Upper Crust.
Ooh, am I in
Remember
that
when I
group
said,
now? I'm in that group, right?
yeah, I think I think it's
I think
from
I got the
Kevin
invite.
Bell Brothers,
Okay.
and he posted it. He has like every version of them, and I'm like, man, I didn't realize how many there was. I was like, well, god dang, because my least favorite was the Vegas Big Gold because I felt like it was
Yes.
too many liberties, and it was like, I'm okay,
Yeah.
young keep that one. And even the one that had NWA across the top, I'm like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
just give me without the, because no matter who has it, I just wanted to be known as the world champion. I should be able
Right.
to look at it and be able to tell.
Yeah. No. I agree with you 100%.
To change the saying to everybody has a good deal.
That needs to go back on one of your T-shirts because listen to me, ladies and gentlemen, you ought to hear half the stories he tells. And if you go back and watch season 1 of Championship Culture, YouTube.com/the Wrestling Realm, playlist Championship Culture, you'll hear some of these stories and you be like, there's no way in the world he's not lying.
Remember how I got my Fiend belt?
I
That was
do.
that
That's
glitch on WWE. And I
yeah.
was like, oh, don't mind if I do.
I feel like you have like a belt network notification thing that comes to your phone because like immediately when something goes off, you're like, hey, something else. And the brownies like, hey, something else. I'm like, wait a minute, how you guys moving this fast? And it's just like, man, and you the king of the deals. I'm still not over that $20 for that undisputed. And then he fake buys others items so he wouldn't notice that he has a giant championship belt that he just bought for $20 and a couple of Mario Kart Wii games and a controller, thinking the guy's not gonna let me buy a few more items and he won't notice. And it worked. Anyway, I digress. We're not here to talk about that, but I'm sorry. Every belt has a deal, has a good deal.
Only Marcus. That's
Just
so.
saying.
I think we established this, brother, that your WCW belts are prestigious with one exception, but it's prestigious because of
The
the
history.
history attached
Yeah,
to it.
of course.
But I think that we can say we're going to save this for ladies and gentlemen. I guarantee you, we're going to do. It might be a special episode with the big gold versus the world. And all I'm gonna say is the world because we could pick up a couple different ones, but I think we got a
Yo, that's the
show of
perfect
brewing.
name for it though. The big goat versus the world. Like this, you got to get multiple world champions to match up to see how it goes against the big goat in terms of
Uh huh.
prestige. Ooh,
And
that's gonna be a good
every
one.
oh, he was sitting there making graphics right now. I'm not doing that.
Already fire grab. You
Uh,
hear that? You hear that? That's a sizzling sound, brother. He's making graphics already. It's
so,
that's that
ladies and
sizzle you
gentlemen,
hear.
I, I want to thank you for taking time to take over. Um,
Glad,
who
glad.
knows what the next ones will be
I'm
because
glad
this
nobody
is
tuned
one
off when
out
I
of
signed on.
five, right? This is
Yeah,
one
one
out
to
of
five.
five.
Yep.
4 more shows to go that you will get the realness because this man, like I said, you could hear his passion coming through. You can
Oh
tell
God,
he has an affinity for these and he has an attachment to every one of these WCW belts. And Eagle Eye viewers will know we purposely left one belt off of our discussion today because, hint, hint, that's coming soon because I've been dying to dive into this topic. But I think we're going to have to have like a Form Voltron moment where we have multiple people in that one
dude,
because
make it happen.
when
Make
we
it
do this,
happen.
we gotta take it all the way back. And when I say back from the beginning lineage of it to where it is now, it's about probably what 40 years worth of belt history in
It
that
is
belt.
multiple generations of this
I
particular
even
belt history that we
Yep.
have to have people that were like in that era that you know what I mean, like with their front row. That
Mm-hmm.
that definitely got to give that 2 cents on the subject. So I think
What's
everybody
your
kind of figured
favorite
out.
belt that debuted in the last? Oh, let's answer this question real quick.
Sure.
So,
Hmm.
what's your favorite belt that debuted in the last 10 years? Whoo.
Oh man, that's kind of loaded. That's not fair. Teenagers unveiled all their new belts.
I was gonna say a year ago I probably would have answered, but I'm gonna tell you this:
Hmm.
the favorite company that debuted the best belts was TNA.
Yeah,
They
come on,
definitely
that's hands
hands
down.
down did not miss on any of their championships that they have debuted. But
Hmm.
if I had to pick one, and I'm a sucker for that X Division title,
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you this because to this day it's still, and I'm gonna let brother Realness say his, but I be ready for this.
Okay, here we go. Let me buckle my seatbelt.
My favorite belt that debuted in the last 10 years, if I
Hmm.
had to choose one, and it's not what you're thinking, brother Realness, it's got to
Now
be
I'm curious.
the AEW World Title.
Wow. I'm not surprised, but I did not see that coming though. Like and you
I
know the
almost
crazy part
said
is
UK belt, but I was gonna say that because the ROH belt was close, the one that you hate, the
oh
last big
no,
one.
please. This
But
looks
the
like the big
AEW
gold.
World Title
Uh-huh.
because when it debuted, and it's had subtle changes, but every time it changed, it still catches my eye.
Sure.
Every time they did something like made it from gold to silver, change how the AEW looks, change how the world banner was written. Every time it caught my, I'm like, wait a minute, that's a new belt. Oh my god, they changed. Oh, that's a different. It keeps catching my attention. But
Yeah.
that's not to say that TNA don't have the most beautiful belts right now. But that's and I actually it's uh, don't say nothing, Dwayne. I actually own three of them. I have three different versions of the AEW World Title, which I think is the most of any belt that I have. I don't consider these TNT belts different versions because they're all different straps. But I have three
Okay.
AEW World Titles.
Now
What's your pick?
I know you told me not to say nothing. Nope, I'm not. We're not gonna gloss over that. Sorry.
Yeah,
We're
what's
not.
your pick?
No, it's not gonna. Where did the third one come from? I remember there was two.
Where's your
You
pick,
went,
sir?
you went, and got the new belt.
No, I don't have the newest one. I don't.
No,
I just have two
I didn't
versions.
say the newest one. I said you went and got the new one because you had two of them.
I had three. I had three. You know I had three.
No, 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 no. You had two of them, and then another one had come out. You was like, and then AEW's like actual belt came out. They're like, oh, we're actually selling the actual belt. You was like, oh crap.
Yeah, I
What did
don't
the
have.
third
I
one?
have one that's very close to it.
Okay, all right, because I remember you said the first one you got was too small. The second one you got you liked it, but then when they came out with the new, you're like, oh, I got to upgrade. There's some things missing or some stuff on it. I'm not okay. You never mentioned the third belt, but I'm not gonna even. No, it's cool. We're
So
just.
the first one I got,
Hmm.
it wasn't stacked. Well, it was almost like a single layer, and I
Hmm.
got it at a deal. The second one I ordered it on purpose because I wanted it a certain way,
Got it.
and that's when I realized that you cannot get a 4 millimeter stacked belt because
Hmm.
that belt is probably about 20 pounds. So
Yeah.
then I saw the version that has the gold world written
That's what it
differently,
was. Yep,
and
yep, yep.
it was the quadruple stacked with the gold plating on top of the silver plating, and not just silver and silver like the other one. So I'm looking at it now to say the difference. And the AEW had more was more gold. So I was
Mhm.
like, yes. But then as soon as I got it, that's when they
Yes, see, that's what I
did
remember.
the
I
thing. But
knew
I
I
was
wasn't
like,
crazy. I
so I
knew I
got
wasn't
three.
crazy.
Yep.
So listen, this is the second time we'll agree on this show. The AEW championship is definitely probably to me. We haven't seen that silhouette in a long time done that way. We've seen similar, like the shape of it, or like I don't know how you call it, the category of that type of title before, but we've never seen anything that is that good.
Where
Of
it
course,
breaks
and
away in the middle and
yeah,
like
it's
the what
it
you
was
call
you.
it, belt break away
Yeah,
from
there you go. Like whatever you
the
call that character of that style of creating belts, but it's such a beautiful belt. That's one of the things. Like if there's anything that the AEW has done extremely right, it's definitely that championship. And of course, my guy, debuted it with Bret the Hitman Hart. He was the one that kind of introduced that world championship. It screams world champion at you. It's such a unique flavor. It's something I need to get in my collection as well. But yeah, because I was on my way to saying the new World Heavyweight Championship because of how much I like it and how much we just recently talked about it. But honestly, yeah, that AEW World Championship is just absolute beauty. They did an excellent job with that. So I have to agree with you, brother. That's the one. That's the best belt that debuted in the last 10 years that I enjoy the most. Although there's a handful of others, but god dang, it's almost time for us to wrap up.
Yeah, I will say there are there might be some belts that they beat in the last 10 years. So I think we're getting some good ideas. I
Listen to
believe
me. Your audience. I like this group, man. They putting out some good stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, man. That's
I
actually
told
a
you,
good show.
I
Think
said
about
if
it.
you engage in the comments, we engage back. So
Listen to me. You what if you have to sit there and come up? And this is how difficult it's going to be. You have to choose your top 10 in the last 10 years. You know how difficult that would be?
yeah, it's going
Maybe
to
it will,
drop this thing.
maybe it
It's
will,
gonna,
maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
it's,
I'm curious. I'm intrigued, belt guy.
yeah, because a couple belts they got certain things, but then I'm like, ooh, do I pick the red or blue version? Do
That's
I pick
see,
the
that's what I'm saying. There's a lot. We talking about the last decade. Like that's a
yeah?
lot.
That's a that's a whole lot because remember certain belts like the cruiserweight belt. When I pointed
Yep.
out that it was purple strap and it was just a darker purple, but I like both of them. But it's another belt that I might like better because the original CCW belt, and I'm just saying it because I'm looking right at it,
Mm-hmm.
versus the current version. The current version is just oversized that it's like there was nothing wrong with the original. But that's for another time. Realness, tell
Yes,
those
sir.
people where they can find you.
You can find me anywhere. First of all, at Wrestling Realm, WRELSTLING. Excuse me, I can't spell wrestling. WREALM. Don't forget the W. We spell realm with a W. Henceforth, the name Wrestling Realm. On Instagram, on X, Threads, Twitter, so on and so forth. Even on Facebook. We have a Facebook group. We have a Facebook page. Um, Also, youtube.com / the Wrestling Realm. That's where you can find all our video content. Of course, patreon.com / wrestling _ realm. And you could also find me personally on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Dwayne Allen 24. Kobe. You can find you can also find me on Instagram at TRDA brand. It's not Trada, it's not TR the brand, it's literally TRDA. Take respect, defy adversity. TRDA brand on Instagram. That's where I like to post all my profile shots. So yeah, if you want to find me, those are all the places you can locate me. You can see my material. Trust me, just be patient with me. Things are changing. We're trying to move things forward. And hopefully you guys are getting a lot more realness, to the public. I haven't been this open and out there in the open as much as possible, but I'm working towards doing it that much more so we can have some more fun and we can engage in more conversations like we have on this show.
I'm telling you, I've seen this spark for this WCW belt. It was like no other,
I'm
and I'm
trying to
so
tell you,
glad
man.
you got a chance
This
to
is
be
the
able to
spark that
speak.
got me back in wrestling. First
And every
takeover show.
Wednesday, you are usually the one asking the questions.
There it is. And look, that's the graphic that I didn't want to promote the show with because I was like, man, if people see my face, they're gonna log off. But now, once they got hooked in the WCW championship talk, they're like, okay, never mind, I guess we'll stay. We don't mind him being
I
here this
am
time.
loving that.
Thank
Is
you,
perfect.
brother Hugh. You're a genius.
That is perfect. That captures every element of what this show was. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you can, on Wednesdays, check out the flagship show of the Wrestle Around Now podcast. We go live every Wednesday about 10:30 ish. We're gonna say 10:30 ish.
Hold your breath,
Trust.
ish.
Enjoy, engage in the conversation. Please put your input in, and then guess what? Tune in all week to our social media because we're very interactive through the week. We like to post things. If you go to Championship Culture underscore on Instagram, you can find us, or youtube.com/the wrestling realm. We have a whole playlist for all of Championship Culture, or just tune in every Tuesday at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. ish, but 8 p.m. where we sit here and like to talk about things. But I want to thank the Realness again for taking time for getting one of his 5 episodes out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, 4 more are coming. But if you got an idea or you want to be part of the conversation, don't forget to tune in, because guess what? Every belt has a story, and I can't wait to hear yours.